Monday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good afternoon. It is the first day of padded training camp practice for the Browns. We'll head out to Lance Reisland and check in with what has happened out on the field in Berea. Kenny Pickett suffered an apparent injury to his hamstring late Saturday. It'll keep him out of practice for the next several days. Tony Grossi talked about the quarterback reps moving forward.
I think Gabriel and Sanders will get a lot of reps this week.
Will Shedeur get reps against the ones finally? And, Tony, why is this not happening? What are they trying to shelter him? What are they trying to do?
I don't think they're
what
protecting him. I don't think they're trying to steer anything. I think they feel Gabriel's better. Gabriel's closer to Pickett than he is to Shedeur Sanders. That's my observation. It was interesting Saturday. You know, they had Shedeur on his field by himself.
Andrew and Kevin went over and watched him.
Yes. I think they were Barry and Stefanski had to decide, do we give Shedeur more or less reps starting Monday? And I don't know what that answer would have been, because he did pretty good Saturday with them watching him. And then the injury occurred, and that solved that.
Quarterback. If it's Shedeur Sanders, that's fine. It's not like they're trying to hold him back. So I get there's a lot of people that like Shedeur Sanders. I just want the Browns to find a competent quarterback. ESPN's Jeff Darlington, Chris Canty, talking about Shedeur Sanders and the Browns quarterback competition.
At the end of last year's college football season, anybody would argue who the more talented quarterback was between Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel. So I think that's what Mike T is basing his belief on, and I tend to agree with him.
I don't understand how that can change so much in a span of a few months, where all of a sudden we're like, well, whatever the reason was, now it makes sense that Shedeur Sanders should be getting reps ahead of the guy that we drafted 2 rounds before him.
Fair, but what I will say, and I will counter with this, is you can lie to a lot of people. You can't lie to the guys in the locker room that see him at practice every single day.
Cool.
And
yes.
I think that's the interesting dynamic, because now Shedeur Sanders will be in a position where he'll get more reps in practice, especially with the first team. And we'll see how things play out from that standpoint. Because you can't put the genie back in the bottle once the other players see it on the field.
Totally agree. I just don't think that necessarily we've seen that yet. We haven't had an opportunity to, and I guess maybe that's Mike T's
That's by design.
But
I think that's by design.
Because they know it's
I think that's by design.
Well, you also have to take it in the proper context. They haven't been in pads. They're not playing football. They're playing gym. So we'll see. If Shedeur Sanders is really good with the pads on, I'm sure he's going to get more opportunity. Offensive line coach Mike Bloomgren with what he's seen so far from second-year offensive lineman Zach Zinter.
One of our core tenets as an offense that we're trying to make sure we're doing is multiple and versatile. And it's not like we're going to line up in a lot of different roles as offensive linemen in terms of lining up at this receiver or doing this, running the ball. So what does that mean for us? It means how many positions can we play, the old more you can do adage. And so if you talk about like a game day roster, if Zach has the ability to be a backup center or certainly an emergency center, that's a big deal for our football team.
What have you noticed with Zach just year 2? Obviously, you came in last year. I know you weren't here, but he was coming off a broken leg, and now this year because sort of hit the ground and differently, but just obviously kind of taking over the second year.
Yeah, I mean, not being here, can't really speak about last year, but I can talk about what we talked about back in May or June, whenever that was. Like, this is a kid that's had an offseason now, and you're seeing the value of that. I think he's playing at a much higher level than when we first hit the field in April, and that's exactly what I expected. So it's great to see that he's had that time to put in the work, and he's getting more comfortable with these techniques, even as we talk about putting him at center today.
And again, Zach Zinter needs to develop into a starting NFL guard. It helps a lot because you got 2 old ones in Bitonio and Teller. We will have plenty of Browns talk ahead, starting with Lance Reisland, who will join us from the Browns training facility, where the Browns have wrapped up practice with training camp today in pads. All right, on to the Guardians. Trying to take 2 out of 3 against the Kansas City Royals yesterday. Joey Cantillo facing Noah Cameron pitching for the Royals. And the Guardians had the bases loaded, nobody out in the first. David Fry, that's kind of a short fly out. That ain't going to get it done. So bases loaded, 1 out. Carlos Santana, that's a strikeout. Gabriel Arias grounds one back to the pitcher. Bases loaded, nobody out in the first. They don't score. Tells you how the game went. It was 2-0 Royals in the 4th. Luke Maley, remember him? Backup catcher. Yeah, he's going to hit one out into left. It's an RBI double, 3-0 Royals with the lead. In the 5th inning, Mikel Garcia at the plate, and this one's not coming back. Solo home run out into left field to make it 4-0 Royals. Guardians break the shutout in the 7th. Gabriel Arias back and healthy and hits the ball the other way, but that would be the only run that the Guardians would get, 4-1, as the Royals take 2 out of 3 from the Guardians. Guardians come home to face the Rockies in a 3-game series, and they won't have Emmanuel Clase. Major League Baseball has notified the Guardians that Clase will be placed on non-disciplinary leave because of the sports betting investigation per agreement with the Players Association. Guardians have been informed that no additional players or club personnel is expected to be impacted. This is the same sports betting thing that put Luis Garcia on administrative leave. Former Reds and Nationals GM Jim Bowden, the impact of Clase being on paid leave will have on the Guardians at the trade deadline on Thursday.
But let's start with the closer market and how it's going to be impacted with Emmanuel Clase off the list. Did you think that he was going to get traded?
Oh, he was going to get traded. There's no doubt. And Chris Antonetti, the president, Mike Chernoff, the GM, have been working 6 weeks at moving Emmanuel Clase, and they were in a really strong position as sellers. And they decided to sell, and that's the direction they were going. And Clase was going to be the headliner at this trade deadline for them. And they were in a great position because we have so many of the contending teams and division leading teams that were focusing on high leverage back end relievers. The Phillies, the Mets, the Dodgers, the Seattle Mariners, the Detroit Tigers. It's just overwhelming, the market, and they had one of the top 2 guys, and they have been working very diligently to get it. So this is franchise changing. This is a huge blow for them because this was going to be an opportunity to really reset this organization by using him as trade bait here. And so it is just a huge setback.
Once again, Clase on non-disciplinary paid leave while they investigate sports betting issues with Clase. Tim Herron was recalled from AAA in a roster move to take Clase's spot. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Lance Reisland is up first from Browns training camp in Berea. Sports4CLE will head out to training camp after this timeout.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little flag in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little flag in your day. Put a little flag in your day.
Sports4CLE continues, and we continue talking Browns out in Berea. It was the first day in pads of training camp for the Browns, and this is a welcome sight as Jerome Ford, right there with the football, doing individual drills back on the field. He was banged up and not a part of the first couple of practices. Only individual drills, no team drills yet. Dylan Gabriel, Joe Flacco getting in some throwing. That would be quarterback 1 and 2 with Kenny Pickett being injured Saturday. Here, Joe Flacco finds Keshawn Johnson, one of the young guys who has practiced pretty well. Shedeur Sanders getting some reps with the twos, throwing the ball pretty well. Shedeur Sanders completing a deep one here as well. So Shedeur Sanders getting the opportunity and certainly looking like he is ready. That's Johnson again, Sean Johnson. Take a look at Dylan Gabriel, finds Jerry Jeudy in some of the team drills. And then Shedeur Sanders, a little quick Out route to Luke Floria, the Menor High and Kent State graduate, continues to impress. Let's welcome in Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer at cleveland.com. He is at Brown's training, just got done with practice. Lance, thanks for joining us. Some takeaways. First day in pads.
Well, I thought the offense was a lot sharper, that's for sure. So snap count, operation was a lot sharper. The offensive line is struggling with protection, which is pretty normal on that first day of pads. I'm pretty sure that's going to improve here moving forward. That defensive line of the Browns, which you and I have talked about, it's really good. So they're going to get tested each day. I thought Deontay Johnson had his best day as a Brown. He was very, very good with all the quarterbacks. His routes were really sharp. He had some really good catches. The young receivers, Larvadain, Florio, those guys did a great job too. The last session before practice ended was, I think, the best 3 to 5 plays that Shedeur Sanders has had. Threw a really nice crossing route. He did a nice job on a check down with pressure. And then he hit Canella, the tight end, third string tight end, deep on a corner out for a touchdown. He had a very good day today. Dylan Gabriel, Flacco, they all looked really sharp. It definitely went Flacco, and then they rotated those guys. It was Flacco, Gabriel, and Sanders, but Sanders also went after Flacco in a couple of the sessions as well. The defense is definitely controlling the line of scrimmage. The run game is a little bit better on the outside. I appreciate them trying to get it going on the inside. Batonio didn't practice today. Conklin was in and out. I think those are just kind of rest days for those veterans. So I look forward to that cranking up. But pretty good day, I thought, in terms of just better operation and looking sharper, especially on the offense side of the ball.
Have you noticed the intensity and a little bit of the physicality that we had talked about? I know they're going to ramp up the physicality, but we've talked about the desire to see a little bit more and a little bit tougher training camp.
Well, the two things I would tell you with Bloomgren and Jacques Caesar, it's going to be tough not to be physical. Those guys are enthusiastic and having a great time out here. They really are. It's fun. I enjoy as a coach watching those guys coach because they take passion in what they're doing. So it's going to be hard for these guys not to be physical. I think once again, I've said this before. It doesn't always make people. It's not the sexiest thing in the world, but these guys are learning the system, right? And as they're learning the system, because even though it's a fancy system, they're going back to it. So in essence, it's kind of new again, right? And they got to learn it. So I think they're doing a good job of making corrections, making sure guys are doing the right things as they're cranking it up. Pass protection has to improve moving forward. Quarterbacks are having trouble getting in rhythm because they got guys in their face. But yeah, I see the physicality and I see just the pace and tempo and attitude they have seems to be changing kind of right in front of us.
You mentioned the conditions. Tell me what the conditions are relative to when you were a former coach and now that you're part of the media.
Well, it very much reminded me of camp back in the day, right? When I was coaching in high school, those late July, early August days. It was absolutely sweltering on the field today. We had a bunch of the drills on field too, but for the most part, you're standing there and you're just like, you can see the heat and you're sweating and it's pretty amazing. I thought the guys did a great job of not making it an issue. It was more of an issue, I think, for me than most too. It's just really, really hot. They did a great job keeping hydrated, all that stuff. But the conditions are definitely, if you're trying to get in shape, this is the weather for it. I mean, it's piping hot down here for sure.
You mentioned Deontay Johnson. What did you see from him and how important can he be to this offense?
Well, he can be really important, right? Can he be that third guy? I know we talked about Luke Flory, who I love. Cage Larvadain did a good job. Caden Davis is going to do a good job. But Deontay Johnson's a game breaker, right? He has all pro type of skill set, right? So when you saw today on a deep comeback how it's hard to cover him. He's really good in a short area. He can play both inside and outside. Today, he kind of moved up the depth chart. I think he's been kind of earning his stripes to this point and getting reps with the 2s and 3s. And today, he had a little bit more, moving more towards the 1s, especially when they're 11 personnel. So I think if he can stay on the right path through the thing, he'll challenge Seth Tillman for that second job because I think they're going to be in a lot of 12 personnel with Fannin and Njoku. But I really thought he turned the corner on both where he's playing on the depth chart, and his performance was pretty good today.
We mentioned the young guys, and all the eyes are on Gabriel and Sanders for obvious reasons. What have you seen from Joe Flacco?
He's steady. Joe Flacco is very, very steady. His demeanor didn't change without Pickett out there. He's been, you can tell he's a guy who's been through it a ton. He's a guy who's seen all the looks, seen all the fronts. So he especially in camp right now, he's very composed. His footwork's very good. He's been in this fancy, awesome offense for, a year. He knows it. So his footwork is very solid. He seems like he knows where he's going with the football. There's only so much you can do in football, regardless of scheme. It's highs and lows, ins and outs, and regardless of how you do it, he's seen it all. So it's probably a little bit of verbiage, but he looks in complete control. And I said this when even Pickett was in there. For me, he gives the Browns the best chance to win in week one, and winning's got to be the most important thing. So young guys are learning, but Flacco looks very composed and looks like the veteran guy that can kind of lead this offense with all these young guys.
Well, the other thing is, think of all the young skill position players that you have. You have Sampson, you have Fannin, all those receivers. Take a pick, even Tillman. You got to have a guy that gives them the opportunity to grow. And from what I'm hearing, that sounds like Joe Flacco. Am I reading too much into that?
Oh, not at all. And what you get from Joe Flacco is that not only is he going to throw the ball well, but he's going to get you out of bad looks, both in the pass game and the run game. So if you come up the line of scrimmage, you don't like to play, Joe's been around long enough where he's going to get you in a good play. And what that does is at least it's 2nd 8, 2nd 9, and not 2nd and 12 and 13, where then they can get the exotic looks on the defensive line and in coverage. That's when you get interceptions. That's when you get mistakes because you didn't win on first down. So Joe's not only going to check the ball down and get it to who he needs to. Obviously, he's got to prove that he can protect the ball too. That hurt him in his last game here with the Browns. But he's a guy. I see he just puts these guys in a good position to be successful because it could be 2nd 5 or 2nd 6.
Rookies, take us through what you saw from both Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel, and have you seen them kind of progress in the way a coach would want them to?
Well, it's funny because you constantly hear things that I never, in my lead up to all the work I did on those two guys, they're kind of at where I thought they'd be at, right? Shedeur Sanders, like I said, he had a really good session day. He's really positive. Dylan Gabriel is really positive. These guys really help each other. Joe Flacco's a great mentor. He's helping. They're always talking. Both guys looked a lot sharper today. It kind of slowed down for them a little bit, even with pads on, which tells me they're learning the system, learning the scheme. They understand where they're supposed to go with the football. Like I said, I think both of them made some really good deep throws today on some crossing routes, on some comebacks. Sanders throws a really good deep ball. He always has. And the thing is, I was saying about Sanders to a couple people out here, he's really used to pressure coming from Colorado. So he's performing until this offensive line gets it together, which they will. He throws very well under pressure because that's how he's had to do it the last 2 years. So I think both guys are progression. Carson Schlesinger had a big hit today in the hole on Sampson. Mason Graham is going to be a boring I think he's going to be a great player who occupies space in there. The rookies are really doing a nice job. Those two rookie quarterbacks, I think, are doing a great job of getting the most out of every rep, whether they're playing or not. They're fun to watch.
All right, before I let you go, what are you paying attention to the next couple of days? It's going to be like pads on, pads off, pads on, pads off as they ramp up. But what are you paying attention to next couple of days of training camp?
Well, next time they really hit, I'm going to focus on the D-line. I kind of spent the time with the offensive line today. With no pads on, I want to see the operation continue to get better, right? Are they getting in and out of the huddle? Are the quarterbacks getting through their progressions quickly? Are guys understanding, is the defense still communicating like they've been, which I think has been at a really high level with motions and formations and adjustments that they have to make to what they see from the offense? That's been really good. But more than anything else, it's just that identity, right? And it's not just a physical identity. It's a sense of urgency. Right now, these guys, in my opinion, these guys have a really good sense of urgency. They're practicing with a purpose. And you only get better if you practice hard. And I see that out of these guys. So the days the pads aren't on, I'm looking for that tempo, that pace, that sense of urgency. And then when the pads are on, I'm looking for physicality. Next time the pads go on, I will focus on the D-line, Mason Graham, all those guys inside, Shelby Harris and Malik, all those guys. I want to see those guys kind of control the line of scrimmage, which right now that defensive line is controlling the line of scrimmage.
Lance Reisland from the Browns training facility in Berea. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much. Thanks, Lance.
Absolutely. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Sounds good. Lance Reisland, make sure you check him out, cleveland.com, as well as the Plain Dealer. Going to join us after training camp practices throughout training camp here on Sports4CLE. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Jacob Roach from the Orange and Brown Report. Straight ahead. Stay with us.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me. Ohio lottery. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
We continue talking Browns on Sports for CLE. Browns quarterback Kenny Pickett suffered a hamstring injury at the end of Saturday's practice yesterday. A day off in Berea today. Head coach Kevin Stefanski with an update on the injured quarterback.
It happened at the end of practice there a couple days ago. Felt something, so we'll just treat it. For any player, you're disappointed when you can't be out there with any injury, but he'll be fine. I don't have a timeline. With something like this, we'll see how it goes. But his mindset, my mindset, will just go day to day.
Did he have an MRI on it or anything?
Yes.
Did Billy tear or anything?
Yeah, I'm not going to get into specifics on the injuries, other than to tell you he's going to do everything in his power to get back ASAP.
With that, let's welcome in Jacob Roach from the Orange and Brown Report, the Barking Browns podcast. So, Jacob, you expect injuries. This one will give the rookies some opportunity.
Yeah, it's going to end up giving, a lot of fans what they wanted to see, which is more of Shedeur Sanders. And we've seen some of that today with them in their first padded practice with him out. And, I feel bad for anybody who gets injured early on in camp, especially a guy like Kenny Pickett, who they were giving a lot of reps to. They were giving him a lot of chances to win this job. It didn't seem like he was at the top of the list from what I saw when I was there Saturday in terms of the level of play. But it really sucks for somebody who actually ended that practice with some really good reps on his last couple of plays and then ends up getting hurt. But yeah, you're going to see more Shedeur Sanders. You're going to see more Dylan Gabriel, and we're going to see if they can, make a push for the starting job. But right now it just seems like it's Joe Flacco by a mile.
All right, Chris Canty from ESPN's Get Up, his thoughts on why the Browns may be slow playing Shedeur Sanders' practice reps in training camp.
Shedeur Sanders is too good and too big to be a bridge quarterback.
Yeah, and again,
it's similar to the argument that you used to make about Cam Newton.
Well,
and I
you
get
said
it.
And Cam said it. It wasn't even
but
me.
Cam was an MVP. He went to a Super Bowl.
But it's the same thing.
It's the same thing. The profile of Shedeur Sanders, because of who his dad is, it moves the goalposts in that direction. Like he's so big. Take Cam Newton out of it. Tim Tebow. It's similar to Tim Tebow. Yeah. It's why Tim Tebow couldn't be a backup quarterback in this league. Because
he also refused to.
Well, sure, but he cast such a big shadow that teams did not want to bring him in. The circus, all of the eyeballs, all of the attention, it was distracting for coaches. It would have been distracting for whoever the incumbent starter was. Which is why I agree with Evan. There's a tremendous amount of pressure on Shedeur, and a lot of it is unfair for him to be able to assert himself as a starter on a truncated timetable. He's going to have to do that faster than Cam Ward, who was the #1 overall pick.
I agree. Faster than Caleb Williams, who has a year in.
It's
Shedeur, if he's in he's going to be in the league after this year. If he's not in the Cleveland Browns, to me, it is more likely than not he's in a position where he's hidden. What do I mean by that? Kansas City or Baltimore.
Jacob, they do realize it's the Browns. Johnny Manziel, Deshaun Watson. I would push back that, he's too big to be a backup quarterback. I understand what they're saying, but recent history tells me the Browns don't care about that.
Well, and you talk about the circus. They don't want the circus with giving him a bunch of extra reps. Well, the noise is still there with the less amount of reps. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I was out there. I don't think that they're slow playing him because of his name or who he is or anything of that nature. He just looks like a guy who's improving every week, but is still uncomfortable in the offense. That's what on Saturday, he was just a little unconfident. You could tell that the speed of the NFL game, he's still adjusting to that sort of thing, but he made some really good throws. He's making progress. They don't care. The Deshaun Watson debacle, they do not care about what bringing a quarterback in does in the media circus and things like that. No, that's just a silly take to me. We've seen it time and time again.
Yeah, they need a quarterback, and they've needed one since, Bernie Kosar left. So, yeah, I get it. Browns signed a running back, Toa Tua, who past 2 seasons has played in the UFL Michigan Panthers. He led in rushing touchdowns last season, the UFL. I know you've kind of written an article about him. Take us through what the Browns are getting in this guy. Quinshon Judkins, who knows when his legal issues will be resolved relative to the league. Courts are one thing, league is another. But what do the Browns get in the guy they just signed?
So he's kind of a long shot for sure to make the roster, but he definitely feels like a really nice practice squad player because he's got a bit of a limited skill set. Like he's not a crazy athlete, he's not crazy explosive. He's got a compact build at 5'9", 220 pounds, but he brings something to the table that other running backs in that room with Quinshon Judkins out doesn't, in the sense that he is a power back. Like he will roll you over. He's kind of got a bowling ball build, just nice, compact, powerful build. If you go watch his 6 rushing touchdowns this year in the UFL, they're all him just running dudes over inside the 5-yard line and just pushing his way into the end zone. Just, being that classic power back there in the short yardage situations. And he had 1,100 receiving yards in college. He's a really nice pass catcher out of the backfield. So he's a third down power back who can catch some passes out of the backfield. He's all right as a pass blocker. He needs to work on some of his technique, but he's got the power to pick up blitzes and give your quarterback an opportunity. So very limited skill set, but if Judkins ends up getting suspended, like 6 games, and they're like, well, I could see them bringing him on the practice squad or making him the third down running back because he brings that specific role, that power back pass catcher, and they feel like, yeah, they could probably get by with him for a few games, but more likely than not, I think he's on the practice squad, but he does have the skill set to fill a role that they have.
As you describe him, is there any way they use him as a fullback, a lead blocker? If you're physical, because Pierre Strong's a little undersized, Dylan Sampson, I don't want to say he's undersized, but those are guys that could benefit from having a lead blocker in the backfield.
Yeah, I certainly think so, because when you watch some of his power runs, I'm really impressed when he gets the momentum in terms of once he gets rolling. He's a little slow rolling, but once he gets rolling and he lowers that shoulder, him as a fullback getting a running start to make a block. I kind of like that idea. I think he needs to work, I think, on his technique and his hand placement and things like that. But yeah, he's got the power. He's got the power and the movement skills, I think, to be a fullback that oh, yeah, actually, you say that. I didn't really think about that. I do like that idea.
All right, veteran tight end David Njoku today talked about rookie tight end Harold Fannin.
David, what's been your impressions of Harold so far?
Oh, my God, he's a beast, right? I love it. He's awesome, you know what I mean? It builds a competition. We get that much better together. He's awesome. He's a great kid.
How much can you help Harold sort of develop that part of his game as well?
Yeah, I'm going to have him come over to my house a lot more often. You know what I'm saying? Just being around him, I feel like it's the energy, the want to, and that's really like the most important.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Kevin Stefanski even talked about the energy of David Njoku, and you kind of got that sense in his brief media meeting with today. He was all over the place.
Yeah, I always like watching David Njoku talk. It's just it's always keeps you on your toes. I mean, just the way he starts that off talking about Harold Fannin, I was like, oh yeah, okay, all right. We're bringing this to the table. I really love that for Harold Fannin because he's not quite the physical freak that David Njoku was coming out of college, but he is a 20-year-old, 21-year-old rookie, and that's what David Njoku was, who was very raw and learning the game. So he gets a really unique perspective on a guy that came into the league in a similar development stage as what Harold Fannin is at the position. So I'm really excited that he's able to get with David Njoku, and David Njoku's healthy, and I think those two could have a really fun year in this offense.
All right, before we go to break, you mentioned you were out at camp Saturday, day off yesterday. They're in pads today. Relative to the quarterbacks, what have you noticed? What did you see with Flacco? What did you see with Gabriel, and what did you see with Shedeur? Now we know that Kenny Pickett won't be there for a few days.
Yeah, for me, it was clear that Joe Flacco was head and shoulders above everybody else, just in terms of his comfort in the offense. That arm is as live as ever. It's effortless for him to flick it deep down the field, just plenty of velocity, plenty of zip. Had some nice touch passes. There were a couple drops, and that kind of made it, if you look at the statistics from that day, kind of, which I think are lack context or whatever. But he had a pretty good day overall. It looks like an NFL offense when Flacco is playing. It looks like an offense that's not going to light the world on fire. I'm not predicting like 30 points a game, but could they score 24 points and this defense be really stingy and they win a few games because of that? Yeah, that offense kind of looked like it. With both Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, they both looked like they are getting more comfortable in the offense, but that's just, they're not completely there. They're not trusting, the protection or their eyes, because the speed of the game is significantly better than it was in college. So you can see them you can tell that it was only their fourth training camp practice, right? But they've made progress. Shedeur had a throw that my jaw is still on the ground back in Berea, because he threw that touchdown to Luke Floria right in front of me. That has made its way around the internet, and that was a special throw. So he had some really nice moments, and I saw him checking down the ball when he was uncertain and didn't take like bad sacks. I know they can't hit him in unpadded practices, but he had some issues in college where he'd hold onto the ball looking for a big play, and I saw him willing to check down, which was progress in my opinion. So I think the rookies are coming along nicely, but it seems like Joe Flacco's job to lose.
Jacob Roach from the Orange and Brown Report now. I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE, I'll be right back. Stay with us.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little flag in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me, the Ohio Lottery. Put a little flag in your day, put a little flag in your day.
We continue talking Browns with Jacob Roach from the Orange and Brown Report, as well as Barking Browns podcast. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey guys, I was just thinking, with Jordan Hicks retiring, there's going to be an open spot at linebacker. Instead of going out and finding a free agent, why don't those guys give Nathaniel Watson a shot to make the starting rotation? I know he was highly touted coming out of college, and he's sitting there on the roster, so why not? Just my thoughts. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Jacob, whenever you're talking about guys that are here, the coaching staff has an idea of strengths and weaknesses. They have a pretty good idea after an entire season. I'm sure Watson will get a chance, but if they go outside, it's because they're seeing, hey, we don't have a guy that can do this. People are forgetting about Jerome Ford. That's a guy that's played a good deal of NFL football as well.
Yeah, Cleveland area, a Browns fan, local kid, former Ohio State guy, who I think when I look at Jerome Baker, I think like this is a linebacker that does everything well. He's not necessarily elite at everything, but he's a good run defender. He's a good run or pass cover. He can blitz. He's got good range and all that stuff. He's a really solid veteran. I think if they go outside, they might want to bring in another veteran because that room is young. Outside of Devin Bush and Jerome Baker, you're talking about a lot of younger players on that roster. Carson Schlesinger and, Nathaniel Watson, Mahmoud Diabate, but I think Watson will definitely get some chances here now with pads coming on because they haven't made a move already at linebacker. So it's clear that they want to get a little bit of a look. But yeah, I think some people are sleeping a little bit on Jerome Baker and Devin Bush because I think they're two quality, veterans that, and we don't know if Devin Bush is going to end up having a suspension for his off the field issues that could be down the pike. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me to see some more run from Nathaniel Watson, just because I did like him at Mississippi State. I think he was really good. He had 10 sacks. Like they used him as a stand-up blitzer. So like he's got a role he could potentially carve out. But I think if they go get a veteran, they want another Mike linebacker. And I think a middle linebacker that's calling the defense. And I don't think that's where Nathaniel Watson would play. He's probably a Will or a Sam. But yeah, I still kind of really like this linebacker group.
So the other thing that the defense they need to create more turnovers. Cornerbacks coach Brandon Lynch talked today and kind of the mindset the group needs to help create those turnovers.
That is the expectation for us to really attack the ball, for us to really set the pace. And we talk about setting the pace for our offense, our defense, and our special team. We talk about we set the pace at the tip of the spear for our whole organization. So starting fast, making sure that our whole group can really function at a high level is important. It's not the tour to the curve, right? It's the expectation. Like it really is. Like this is what we must do to help our team. So really, we're not going to fret plays. Like it's one of those things that is part of the process. We want to keep getting time on task, trust in that process, knowing that those things come in bunches. And as long as we can get tight and stay tight, now we force the quarterback off his first read, and then we get our engine home.
Well, you know, they had 4 interceptions all of last year. I still am stunned every time I look that up, and it's like, that's horrible. They have way too much talent to have 4 interceptions on this defense.
And it feels like, you know, Denzel Ward is as great as he tends to drop a few of those. And it was interesting because he came out early for practice on Saturday and actually spent about 10 minutes on the jugs machine catching passes. So they are making some kind of, you know, effort to work on catching the ball, even with their defensive backs, to be like, hey, those opportunities are there. You've got to capitalize on them, because like some of those turnovers in some big spots in 2023 helped that defense be as historic as it was. And it helped an offense that was not very good get set up in scoring position where they didn't have to do as much. Like, oh, I only got 20 or 30 yards to get in field goal range. You know, I'm not as worried about putting together an 80-yard drive with an offense that, especially early in the year, was just not very good. And then you force a turnover, you get a defensive touchdown or something like that. And that momentum, those plays are just so big for momentum and confidence. And then your offense is, you know, worked up and like, hey, we got to pay off the defense. And yeah, they've got to find a way to come over with more turnovers, but it does look like they're making a conscious effort to do that. And especially their star, Denzel Ward, like leading and spending extra time on the field on a jugs machine. I thought that really spoke volumes about him and kind of what he wants, how he wants to lead by example, and kind of the emphasis they're putting on trying to convert more of those opportunities into actual turnovers.
So the practice in pads today just wrapped up a little bit ago. But I want to get into some observations that you've had from camp so far, and some guys who have really opened your eyes that you're kind of trying to figure out, hey, I want to see more of this guy. So take us through what your thoughts have been so far with camp.
In person, no matter how many times I see Myles Garrett in person, I will never not be in awe of some of the athletic feats he can do. I just, not that that's breaking news or anything. It's just like, if you blink, it'll look like he teleports because he's all of a sudden on the quarterback and you're like, that's not where you were. That should not be possible. But the entire defensive line, to me, just looks so fast and explosive. Use an early play from a padded practice today where the quarterback had to spin and get away from Myles Garrett on the outside, and sitting right there for the cleanup sack is Mason Graham. You know, and this defensive line, if they can play up to the talent, it's clear that they're athletic, they're fast, they're aggressive. Like, these defensive tackles with Mason Graham and Malik Collins could really feast, because I think this edge group could force a lot of quarterbacks to step up, and those dudes are just going to be waiting. And that was just, kept popping to me on Saturday. And Isaiah McGuire looks good. Alex Wright looks healthy and good. He batted down a pass and was pretty explosive off the line as well. I thought Joe Tryon-Shoyinka looked pretty good. He looked bigger than I remember him being, but still is fast. Carson Schlesinger really stood out to me on Saturday because he kind of looks the part. You know, they're putting him in there with the green dot, with him calling the defense, and he's at least doing a halfway decent job because they weren't lining up incorrectly. He was getting the calls out and communicating well with the coaches want, and his ability to cover ground. He's another player I thought looked bigger than I expected when I saw him in person. But more so than anything, you know, outside of the defensive line was probably the best thing. But then that secondary, I also thought looked like they should be looking. Ronnie Hickman had a few really nice athletic plays that impressed me. Denzel Ward was Denzel Ward. There were some flashes from Newsome and Grant Delpit and Martin Emerson. But the biggest thing to me is the defense, as we expected, is more. It's much more talented and further along than the offense. But there's a lot of players on that side of the ball that really impressed me. But I will give one other shout out to Dylan Sampson. You can't take much from those unpadded practice when it comes to run game and offensive line and running backs. But when he was getting the ball, he was very explosive, very quick, and very decisive. And so some really good things to build off of early on in camp.
So what are you paying attention to the next couple of days as they start the padded portion of practices?
The biggest thing is going to be for me is the offensive line, because that's in the run game in general, because that's, like I said, that's something you can't really accurately judge when they're not in pads, because the offensive line really is at a major disadvantage without being able to fully hit and block back. So you don't know what that's actually going to look like until they put pads on. So I want to see if that defensive line can continue to look really, really good like they had the first 4 practices. Can they continue to do that against an offensive line that, is expected to bounce back? And we're hoping to bounce back, and they're healthy. Tevin Jenkins is missing some time, but that's kind of a thing we knew about him coming over with the medicals from Chicago, but that's in a backup sense, but they're healthy. I want to see if this offensive line looks better than last year, and if this run game looks like it's going to be a good complement to the play action. And so that, because if this run game doesn't go, the offense is going to have a lot of struggles in my mind. So they've got to be able to establish that. So that's the main thing I'm going to focus on. And of course, I'm going to see if any wide receivers not named Jerry Jeudy step up. I know Deontay Johnson had a few nice grabs today, but it's very evident that it was Jerry Jeudy and a bunch of guys trying to figure things out. So I want to see if they can do a little bit better. And of course, I'll obviously be watching the quarterbacks. But the big difference, I think, is the battles in the trenches.
Jacob Roach from the Orange and Brown Report. As always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jacob.
Thanks, guys.
Jacob Roach, make sure you check him out. Writes for the Orange and Brown Report, also co-host of Barking Browns podcast. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Head coach Kevin Stefanski, before practice today, talked about first day of training camp in pads today.
Yeah, once the pads go on, Tony, they're on today. We'll take a day off tomorrow, put them back on Wednesday. But really, you still need to practice safely. So we'll thud the runners, meaning we'll fit up the runners. We won't tackle to the ground in this practice. But it is important that when you get the pads on, offense, defense, special teams, you have to get acclimated to your pads, as you know. Quarterbacks throwing in shoulder pads, people catching in shoulder pads, et cetera, et cetera. But by the same token, while yes, it's physical, we don't want a bunch of guys on the ground. That's not the intention of putting the pads on. It's still to use our technique and still to be smart when it's Browns versus Browns. We want the players to get comfortable in their pads. There is an element of literally just throwing and catching, which you're not allowed to do in your shoulder pads previous to now. So getting used to it, and then the physicality will ramp up. I mean, we're not in those soft shells anymore, so you'll hear it a little bit more, the physicality of it. But that's all part of training camp. It's been going on for a pretty long time.
Welcome in, Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Tim, I've said this, and you're probably getting sick of it, and viewers are probably getting sick of it. They need to be more physical and more up-tempoed, and it appears early on like they're going to be, because the last couple of years have been a disaster out the gate, and I think it's the way you deal with training camp.
Yeah, I do think, obviously, Kevin Stefanski, I feel like this whole offseason has been talking about a tougher mentality and, getting into the pads. I know you can only do so much on that first day in pads, but it's a different mindset, when you get into padded practices. Stefanski talking about kind of getting that acclimation to full pads, working through those guys, because most pads and practicing with them, because most of these guys haven't been in pads since January, since the season ended. So yeah, that it's definitely when camp ratchets up a little bit, you have to believe, and that's when really it gives a chance for the guys on the lines to really shine. And if you're talking about trying to be a more physical team, you got to really be able to, do it the right way when you put the pads on. That's going to be important for this team to do that going forward, especially, next time they put them on Wednesday.
All right, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave Frank from Cleveland. Why not throw Shedeur out there with the ones? I mean, you say everybody says he got to earn it. What Dylan Gabriel do to earn it? Because he's a third-round pick? Come on, the guy can't see over a line of scrimmage. Give the kid a chance. You know why? Because they're going to regret it when they do. He'll be the starter behind Joe Flacco. All right, love you, brother. You and the family be good and be safe. As always, I'll talk to you.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Tim, you know what? There is nothing that the Browns, Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski, Jimmy Haslam, would regret if they find a quarterback that can play. He's going to get his chance. And by all appearances, he's kind of been preparing himself. So let's see what happens.
And it's mostly been obviously progression in the right direction, especially today. He had a couple nice touchdown throws that we saw in the Twitter highlights out there. And it does seem like they're bringing him on a little slowly, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But going back to Dylan Gabriel, what the caller was saying about, guy who can't see over the line, you have linemen in the NFL that are 6'5", 6'6", 6'7". I don't think there's a quarterback who's going to be able to see over them. It's not about seeing over the line. It's about finding throwing windows. And in the day of the mobile quarterback, those guys are going to be moving anyway. They're going to be trying to create space either in the pocket or outside of the pocket to find those passing lanes in those windows. You have linemen that are just too big to see over unless you're 6'10", and there's never going to be a 6'10" quarterback, let alone anybody in the NFL who's 6'10". So I do think, I understand, why Dylan Gabriel's ahead of Shedeur Sanders. I think, obviously, with Gabriel playing in multiple different offenses, he's got more familiarity, more experience than Shedeur does at the FBS level. And I think right now that's giving him an edge. That's not to say Shedeur can't close the gap. It feels like, if he continues practicing the way he has, it's just a matter of time before he gets those first-team reps and an opportunity to show what he's capable of. It probably comes down to, the coaches trying to bring these two guys up, slightly different ways.
Yeah, and earlier in the show we heard Chris Canty, former player, who said, and I don't agree with his premise, but I do agree with the fact that the veterans will tell you if he's playing well, and if they think they can win with him, great. That's what I'm waiting to hear. I want to hear the veterans talk about one of the rookies and in a glowing terms that they think they can win with, and then you'll know who the quarterback should be. Let's turn our attention to wide receivers. Wide receiver coach Chad O'Shea was talking about Michael Woods and the young wide receiving core and what they need to see from them.
In terms of Mike Woods, the player, Mike Woods is a player that has multiple position value, and the reason he brings that is because he's got very strong mental. He's also got a physical skill set where we can put him at multiple positions along the formation. So that's what we tell our players. The more you can do, the more value you're going to have for this football team. And Mike, along with a lot of players in our receiver room, the young guys included, have done a great job of establishing a role based on their ability to play in a multiple position role, and it starts with their mental capacity to learn the offense. I mean, the rookie receiver group that we have is a tremendous group. They've worked extremely hard. They have learned the playbook, exceeded expectations in what they've learned, and they've allowed themselves to go and play any position when the opportunity presents itself, and that will give them opportunity. So I'm using that group as an example of what we want out of our players. Learn what to do, and you'll have a chance to go out there and maximize your opportunities.
Tim, the reason that interests me I didn't think of it in terms of, okay, this receiver does this. Luke Floria plays in the slot well. There's a role for that. This guy has the ability to separate. There's a role for that. Maybe the wide receiving room is going to be a patchwork thing until they spend more draft capital to get a young guy that can do everything.
Yeah, it might just kind of be what it has to be. I mean, it really is, the most proven commodity easily is Jerry Jeudy coming off, what the year he had last season. Cedric Tillman, obviously missed the last handful of games with a concussion, but, prior to that, he was looking like he was really turning the corner and really showing, why people thought he could have been a second-round pick in 2024. Deontay Johnson, you're kind of hoping that he can rediscover that Pro Bowl form he had in Pittsburgh. And then after those three guys, you have a lot of question marks, because you have guys like Jamari Thrash, who struggled as a rookie, Michael Woods, who is, really was a sixth-round pick, battled injuries throughout his career, really never has gotten an opportunity. David Bell, third-round pick, really hasn't panned out either. And then you obviously have other guys like Luke Floria, the former Mentor kid, who seems by all accounts like he is having a great training camp and maybe has a shot to steal a roster spot. And I think that's ultimately what you hope for. And yeah, that's absolutely right what you're kind of saying. I mean, you can't, the reality is, no matter how many draft picks you have, you can't fix every hole in one off season. That's just the reality in the NFL. There's just not enough players you can add to a roster over one season just to overhaul everything. And it's clear based on the way the Browns drafted that they were trying to focus on reestablishing the running game, trying to figure out, can they take these two mid-round quarterbacks, and can one of them be that diamond in the rough that could be just the easy way to turn a franchise around, where you don't have to turn around and possibly take your two first-round picks and trade up to get a quarterback. If you get one in the third or fifth, you've hit the lottery. But just when you look at this team, yeah, it's not a very deep, proven receiving core. There's guys that can play, but it comes down to, how do they develop? What can they do on the field? Can these young guys, even Cedric Tillman, continue to step up in year three? It's going to be a very interesting thing, I think, to watch this season.
Yeah, and the other thing is, don't ask guys to do stuff that you haven't seen them do. Ask them to do what they do well. In some ways, that's the definition of coaching. Tim Bielik and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We will continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Colin Cowherd from The Herd with Colin Cowherd on FS1. It's made a lot of noise the last couple of days about Jimmy Haslam wanting to pair Arch Manning with Nick Saban and having them in place when they move into their new stadium in a few years. Browns beat reporter Daryl Ryder with his thoughts on that topic.
Are you a fan of the Nick Saban conversation?
No.
Why?
I think it'd be Mike Holmgren 2.0. I remember the disaster in Miami. He's in his 70s. Like he would be coming here. He'd be trying to win, but like he'd be working on his retirement fund.
Nick Saban Holmgren 2.0.
Yes, I'm not interested in Nick Saban as head coach of this football team. Absolutely not. Look, I saw what happened in Miami. Ken, that was a Cleveland Browns you-know-what show of epic proportions.
They went 9-7. We're 9-7.
He didn't. It was a three-ring circus. He did
a three-ring circus at 9-7.
Yeah.
At 05.
All the stuff that happened off the field and the way he handled things.
I don't remember any of that.
I don't want any part of Nick Saban.
But they
really don't.
They didn't get him Drew Brees. Would you have quit over not getting Drew Brees when he did what he did with New Orleans? You wouldn't have quit over not getting Drew Brees at that time?
Yeah, I got news for you. You ain't getting Drew Brees this time around either.
Tim, again, he's referring to when Nick Saban was the head coach of the Dolphins before he went to LSU and did his college thing and ended up at Alabama. He's 70-some years old. I mean, that is not the life. A 70-year-old is not what you should be looking for to rebuild your franchise.
Not just 73. He turned 74 on Halloween, number one. Number two, I think Daryl does do a good job pointing out that, yeah, the Dolphins went 9-7, but I think it was the year after that where, things kind of went off the rails, and then he left to take the job at Alabama. So that's number two. And then number three, looks like he's having a good time on College game day. People were wondering what that fit was going to look like, and he looks like he's having a good time in retirement. So why would he want to go from retirement back to the NFL, place where he didn't have success? So that is, that just makes no sense to me because, just enjoy retirement, enjoy, not having to worry about, game planning every day, all this stuff, running practices. He doesn't have to worry about that. And what he didn't mention specifically, the Arch Manning thing, we've talked about this before. There's no guarantee he's going to be in this draft in 2026. We're talking 2027, 2028, in which case you're talking about being bad for multiple seasons, not just this season, but not even just being bad this season and next season, but passing on a quarterback in 2026 when you have 2 first-round picks. You're not sure of what you have at quarterback with Dylan Gabriel and Shadur Sanders. You don't know what those guys are going to be till they play games. And then you talk about passing on another quarterback class in 2026, waiting for Arch Manning when there's no guarantee you're going to have a chance to draft him, because whoever has the number 1 pick in that draft, spoiler alert, if Arch Manning is good as we think he is, you could offer 20 first-round picks, and they're not going to trade him. That's just the reality. Guys like him, as good as they are, if they're cornerstone franchise-level quarterback prospects, you could offer the ownership stake of a franchise, and you still wouldn't get a trade done. That's just the reality of it. So it's fun to talk about, but the reality is we're talking maybe 0.01% chance that any of those things, that both of these things could happen. Could one? You never know. I mean, you never say never, but both, I mean, there's almost no chance that's going to happen.
All right, offensive line coach Mike Bloomgren talking about balancing a physical camp with being smart where the offensive line is concerned.
Yeah, I think Kevin has a great plan for that in training camp, and certainly as we're trying to make this a physical training camp, how we're going to take care of those guys, and there's a good plan in place. There's also an open lines of communication where I want to hear from those guys, like, how is your body feeling? Because I know I'm a better coach with those guys on the field, and so we're going to do everything we can to keep them ready for game days while getting the work at these new techniques in some cases so that they can be completely comfortable and can get their job done when they're in there.
Is there also a comfort level given that those 4 guys have as much experience as they do, especially even together?
Yeah, the nonverbal communication between those guys is really cool. Like a grunt means a lot of things.
That might be my favorite saying from training camp. A grunt means a lot of things. I digress. Offensive line has to be, and we've touched on it, they have to rebound if this team's going to win more than 5 games.
Yeah, and Mike Bloomgren was definitely talking about it there, keeping guys healthy, because we've seen injuries kind of wreck this offensive line for the last 2 seasons. DeJuan Jones, back-to-back years, has had season-ending injuries. Jedrick Wills, who's not here anymore, missed time those last 2 seasons. Jack Conklin, out since missed the entire 2023 season after week 1, came back last year and was certainly healthy. So good, that's good to see. But obviously you want to figure out a way, like you said, to find that delicate balance between, getting these guys ready for the season and getting them healthy. And I think it's interesting, the idea of pro coaching more so than, any other level being kind of a 2-way street here where, you got to listen to your players as well. It's not just, you tell them what to do. They're professionals. They know what's going on. So they're going to tell you as well. And you kind of have to weed that dynamic. And Mike Bloomgren, I know he's, coached at Rice for a handful of years. He does talk. You can tell that he was a head coach kind of in the way he talks, but he's also seems like he's smart enough and kind of understanding, like, hey, I got to do my part to, listen to these guys and kind of they're going to know best how they're going to feel going into the season. So that's, I think, that's an interesting dynamic to have. And I like it. I like, that dynamic of coaches, as much as you want players to listen to coaches, you also want coaches to get feedback from players, because ultimately, if you have that quality relationship, that's when you're typically going to get the most out of those guys.
Yeah, without question. And the other thing is, you can tell there's a little bit of Bill Callahan in Mike Bloomgren, which is a really good thing relative to the offensive line. Tim Bielik, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
Tim Bielik, make sure you check him out. Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, always really good stuff. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.